We were clear-eyed about the risks. We planned for every contingency.
But did they? Was the Biden administration clear-eyed on what happened in Afghanistan? Did they realize that the Taliban were quickly going to move in and take control of Afghanistan in a matter of days? I mean, Matt, this is something that I think everyone's in shock with what we've seen happen, these images coming out of Afghanistan.
I was on an airplane because I've done some travel, but I got on one flight. By the time I got off the flight, the Taliban had the seat of government. I mean, it literally didn't fall in days. It almost seemed like it fell in hours. And there's no way that our military leaders didn't understand the fragility of the then government.
Right.
There's no way they didn't understand that. And somehow the president either was cavalier about it or it wasn't getting through to the president either. And I don't know what the answer is, but there's nothing good about what happened.
Well, you know what happens in these White Houses. You've been there before. I've been there before. They start leaking on each other. The latest I've heard is that these top generals expressed their concerns to President Biden about pulling out too quickly, and also saying that the Taliban could quickly take control because the Afghan forces were not in a strong position.
I also think
this is going to be the blame game now.
I also love how the Harris people were leaking that they were right in the middle of everything on all of this, on pulling out the troops. And boy, they've done a 180 on that. Now it's like, whoa, we were at the beach. They didn't really pull us in. It's like you're going to see this infighting, and you're right. They tried to characterize the Trump administration as somehow a unique presidency where leaks came out. By the way, way too many leaks did come out.
Oh, yeah.
But this Biden White House is unraveling before our eyes. I just say this. There is a fragility to presidencies. And I remember when, with President Bush, a very prominent reporter emailed me after Katrina and said, the Bush presidency's a spent bullet.
Yeah.
And I was so offended. I was like, because when you're within a presidency or close to it, you think it's so majestic and so powerful. And what you don't realize, an event can change everything. And I will make a prediction that I think the events and the videos and the human tragedies coming out of Afghanistan, what we're seeing with Joe Biden is that he was already on thin ice because of his age and everything else, and the way he won, quite frankly. Now, he's actually lost the support of those who were trying to convince themselves he was up to the job.
Yeah, and when you have Leon Panetta, when you have David Axelrod, a former Obama advisor, when you have some of these liberal media types like Joe Scarborough, Chuck Todd, all being very critical of Joe Biden, you know that there's an emergency. But let's go to your tweet real quick. And remember, it's at SCHLAPP. Matt, you tweet out, we are in a dire time inside America. We are tearing at the fabric that once held us together. We have allowed cultural radicals to distract us on pronouns and passports. Now we have been jolted into the fact that we have bigger issues with enemies that hate freedom, China and jihad.
And I say jihad, but, and our next guest really understands this, but it's really Iran, specifically, going back to the idea of allowing a path to Iran becoming a nuclear power, or rewarding the radicals in Iran instead of trying to undermine the radicals in Iran. And I think that, we're all watching. It's almost like the wrong people are getting ahead of the game.
Yep. So I think, what we need to be focusing on, we're going to see what happens in the next few days. I think the Biden administration has completely lost control of this situation. I've been guest hosting on Newsmax early morning, spoke about this, Matt, about Jake.
Yeah, you talked about Jake Sullivan.
That's right.
We should show that video. It's a great video.
These terrorists will have access to American equipment. Just think about that. Just let that sink in for a moment. So when we're talking about equipment being left behind, Americans being left behind, there was no strategy. There was no exit strategy from the Biden administration. Now you know what you're going to start seeing, Rob? More and more leaks coming out of the Pentagon, coming out of the State Department, coming out of the White House. We are already seeing that the top generals expressed concern about pulling out and abandoning the Afghan forces. You're going to see more of this talk happening because right now, if it was up to me, Jack Sullivan, he should be fired immediately because of the mere fact that he has failed in his duty to protect the American people who are in Afghanistan. And let me tell you another part of this. Joe Biden, he vowed to restore the alliances with our allies.
Yeah.
And now you have our allies criticizing his actions in Afghanistan.
I think
So you're doing a pretty good job doing that show.
It's early in the morning, but it's been great to be on air, and I've gotten to interview a lot of these national security experts, many of them, and I also got to interview a child bride from a former child bride from Afghanistan who was forced into a marriage at the age of 14. Yes, this is what the Taliban does. It is a oppressive, brutal regime, but you know, it's one of those things that I do believe that for the Biden administration, it's a moment where they really need to be thinking about who they're going to fire.
We're already seeing reports of women being told they must wear a burqa under penalty of execution.
Right.
We've been told that as they went around the country and took back towns, the Taliban has offered teenage brides to, military leaders. This is just a barbaric reality, and I think it's jolting to everybody. And tonight we have two guests who really understand what's going on. Winsome SEARS, who's this great dynamic candidate who's running to be the lieutenant governor in the Commonwealth of Virginia, will join us. But first, we have a very dear friend, someone who has really helped the American Conservative Union and CPAC over the years. He stepped away to get back into the fray. I don't know why these people want to get back into the fray, because it takes a lot of courage these days to run for office.
We need leaders like Adam.
I know, it's true. Adam LAXALT, the former Attorney General of Nevada. I said that correctly. It's not Nevada, it's Nevada. Adam LAXALT, thanks for being with us on America Uncanceled.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so I just got back from the Bass Fry, where you were so gracious to invite Mercy and I to come out. You had 4,000 people in the sweltering heat. These were some pumped up Republicans, independents, conservatives, and a lot of, obviously, enthusiasm for your announcement to run for Senate. You got so excited you decided to just go ahead and announce.
Well, not exactly, but yeah, we announced yesterday, and there's no question that our country needs new leadership now more than ever. When you see what the Democrats are doing to this country, what they've done for this entire year, and now you see this absolute catastrophe out of Afghanistan, people are ready for a change. And when you look at the worldview that they present, you start thinking back to the Obama era, where they were more keen on releasing terrorists because they were so concerned about the pressure from the international community. And after all of the pressure to bring in allies and to not be so quote unquote America first, you look out there today, what does that foreign policy worldview leave us as a country? Where's the international community right now and today? You see the UN out there saying that they're very upset of what's going to happen to women and children in the humanitarian crisis. Okay, well, go do your thing, international community. But of course, we know that they're not going to be able to do anything. They're not going to save the situation in Afghanistan. And so it's such a stark reality of what a failed foreign policy model they have. And it's a stark reminder that the left has been focusing on all of this radicalism and the transformation of our nation and defunding the police and BLM and wokeifying our military. And then we wake up and turns out in an instant, you get to see just how dangerous our enemies can be. And I hope people really wake up and understand that we have real world concerns, both in the world and our country, and it's time to take them more seriously.
Adam, I think one of the things we've seen is the failure to execute a successful plan in withdrawing our troops and withdrawing the Americans who have been left behind and our allies who have been left behind in Afghanistan. You served in the military. Where do you think this failure occurred?
Well, let me first just say that I did detaining operations in Iraq, and we were part of the rule of law system that they were trying to stand up, and we had to work with local nationals they were, of course, they were the bedrock of what they were trying to set up their own justice system. And I remember exactly what it was like to wait at a checkpoint when we were receiving 3 or 4 local nationals, and then you find out that one didn't make it because they were killed the night before for cooperating with the Americans. And so I just can't imagine what we're about to see unfold here. I can't imagine the terror and the fear of these people that thought that they had an ally. And for us to not have a plan, of course, first and foremost, to get Americans out, to secure the weapons over there, and to secure, by the way, the terrorists and detainees. All of these things are absolutely unconscionable. And all I can say is that the buck stops with the commander-in-chief, and he has failed miserably in executing this.
You know, Adam, I watched that speech yesterday very intently. I was here at the CPAC headquarters, watched it with the team here. It just seemed like the president wasn't really grasping reality. He has this part in the speech where he talks about that China and Russia, these two really pernicious powers on the globe, that they would have wanted us to continue to keep stability in Afghanistan, and that's one of the reasons we're pulling out so in such a novice fashion. Somehow that hurts them. What is he talking about?
Well, he built up this entire straw man that he was standing for for America, and America wants us to withdraw from Afghanistan. It's just shameless that he would say that. There was no one was debating that, and he does the entire speech that the buck stops here, but it was all deflecting to everyone else. And again, talking about the military, people get relieved of command for offenses far less than what just happened here, and we cannot let our political leaders escape the reality that they are in charge. He is the commander-in-chief. There's no more important concept that he is the head of the military. He is in charge of protecting our troops and having a strategy. And so I could tell you that people, service members must just be absolutely appalled that he, one, abandoned our folks, but two, that he was just so flippant about taking command and taking ownership of what happened.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think one of the things that really bothered me in the speech was when President Biden really blamed the Afghan forces for failing to stand up to the Taliban. And we knew that the United States was there to provide air support, to provide intelligence, and ensure that the Afghan forces were in a stronger position to make sure you kept the Taliban at bay. Obviously, that has all been destroyed. And I think the aftermaths are going to be very, very telling. We saw a pollster give President Biden received an F grade from Independence for his Afghanistan speech this week. I mean, how can President Biden and his team survive from this politically?
He was set on the political optics of pulling out on 9/11, and
Right.
That's it. I mean, I think it starts and ends with that. We hopefully will find out just how much intelligence, just how much he heard from the military that said we're not ready, we need to do this differently. Of course, it doesn't seem like the media is really asking those questions. I mean, they're starting to really catch on that this administration is a failed administration, but we need to get those answers. Our elected representatives need to be demanding those answers. My senator here in Nevada, Senator Masto, she's issuing statements about I'm monitoring the situation. And, I hope that the Afghani women that's worked with us, they're not going to be hurt. And you're just sitting back there thinking, like, this is our leaders, our leadership. This is their response. People need to step up. People need to call this out. And, it's one thing that's not getting enough attention is what happened to that prison. I can tell
Yes.
you, I worked in detainee operations. And when I was there, it was over the surge. We searched over 20,000 detainees. And there was a subpopulation of detainees that were the worst of the worst. These were people that you're sending SEAL teams in the dead of night, massive plans, huge risks to capture. We lost troops and Navy SEALs capturing some of these major high-value targets. And that a major portion of that population was at Bagram. Tell me, what was the plan for those hardened terrorists? How could we ever leave that facility without having removed them? Like, I want the answer. Where were they supposed to go?
That's right.
What's the plan? What country was going to take them? Were they going to Gitmo? I haven't even heard that question asked. But those were, you heard General Mattis, who he said that Biden, more than any national figure to visit Afghanistan, was the least willing to listen to those on the ground. He had his view from what he heard from Washington, and nothing was going to change it. And I think you're seeing this play out here in this Afghanistan catastrophe.
And it's worse than that. If I could take it one more step, Attorney General LAXALT, future Senator LAXALT, I tweeted out yesterday that Americans will die because of what happened with the release of these hardened terrorists. Women will be killed, gays will be killed, people who were allied with America in that country will be killed because of that oversight alone. And this is one of the reasons why this is not just a political question for the Biden administration. It's really a moral question about moral authority. And it plays into why it's so important that we have a Senate that is a counter to these reckless foreign policies. You've announced your candidacy to take on this incumbent. It's kind of a no-name incumbent, I'll be honest with you. People just view her as one of the kind of crowd of left-wing people who bow down to what the new Democratic Party tries to do. Is this one of the reasons you're running?
I'm running to represent Nevadans that have had no voice for the last many years. They have had to deal with leaders like Masto that are kowtowing to the left. They're not standing up for them. They feel hopeless, and they feel that our communities are less safe, that our schools are being handed over to leftists as they're trying to jam down, radical woke ideology. This moment we're in right now, it is a palpable moment that Nevadans are absolutely fed up. They're scared. They're angry. And they want to change, and I hope to be that change for Nevada.
Well, I think Nevada would be benefiting tremendously as if you could be the next, and will be the next senator of Nevada.
Probably the 51st senator. Think about that.
Oh, that'd be
the
good.
51st senator. I mean, we have to look at a race like this. It can be the majority
Why
maker.
are you nudging me?
Because I feel passionate about taking back the majority.
Well, Adam, we do. Adam, we are here for you. You know that. The Schlapps are big fans. We want to be out campaigning with you and make sure that you have a successful run. And where do people go to support your campaign?
Well, I hope people will go on adamlaxalt.com. We are going to win this race. We are going to be the 51st seat and be part of the last line that can stop the radical left from taking over our country.
Well, thank you so much, former Attorney General Adam LAXALT. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you very much for having me.
And up next, we've got WINSOME SEARS. She's our Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor in Virginia, and just a real dynamic woman.
She's great.
So we'll be right back.
Welcome back to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. You know, there are two states with a lot of political activity this year, the state of New Jersey and the Commonwealth of Virginia, where Mercy and I both live. And we have some very exciting candidates running statewide in Virginia. And I'd say the most exciting candidate is Winsome SEARS. She's a small business owner, a wife, a mother, and served in the military. We want to talk to her about the terrible events that have unfolded before our eyes after the last few days. And so it's our great honor to welcome to America Uncanceled Winsome SEARS. Thanks for being with us, Winsome.
Thank you both for having me. It's a good day to be here.
Yes.
Of course, and you're the Republican nominee for the lieutenant governor slot here in Virginia, and things are really heating up. But before we go into state politics, I want to get your perspective as a former Marine to explain what you're seeing with this fiasco happening in Afghanistan because of President Biden's reckless decision to a swift withdrawal that has left a country in chaos.
You know, one thing we learn from history, as someone once said, is that we never learn from history. We started this, when you think about it, in a proxy war against the Soviet Union when we armed the Mujahideen back 1979 to 1989, when a pro-Soviet Afghan government was, fighting to keep Afghanistan, and the folks did not want it. The Afghans did not want it. And so that, of course, was the Mujahideen. Then that went away, but then out of that, we got Osama bin Laden. And then from that, when there was a vacuum of leadership and the warlords couldn't agree and fought each other, we got something called the students. And you know who the students turned out to be? The Taliban. And then here we are again, fighting. America is fighting. If only you remember Charlie Wilson's war, if only at that time when the Mujahideen had fought the Soviets and had won, and if America hadn't cleared out like they did then, we put in over 25% of the resources for that war. We left equipment behind. We left ammo behind. We left a whole lot of technology behind. And here we are again, leaving things behind. Now, here's the thing. You are the leader, Mr. President. You have to own it. Leaders don't up and run and say somebody else started this, somebody else did this. You are the one who caused where we are to be today. I want to look at it from the perspective as a Marine. I should have corrected you back there. Once a Marine, always a Marine.
I know. I thought about that, Winsome. Let me say, when it came out, I was like, oh, I'm sure she's going to tell me. Come on, Mercy.
So I just want to come back to, what are the families who have lost their loved ones in Afghanistan thinking? What are they? What did we do this all for? 20 years. But for what? For naught? And the Chinese have conveniently slipped right in, and now they are going to reap the benefits of what we had started. And what is one of those benefits? Well, lithium. You know that there are, I think, $2 or $3 trillion worth of lithium in the ground, in the soil in Afghanistan. It powers just about everything we do from our phones and everything else. They are going to reap the benefits of that because we have cleared out wholesale. You know who's also not leaving? Russia isn't leaving. And so what is the benefit? What did we gain out of all this? Nothing. And you see those folks, the Afghans, clinging to freedom in the form of a plane to America, because we made promises to them. We said we would help them. You help us, we'll help you. We left all that.
It's true. It's true, and it's a great tragedy, Winsome. And you have these moments with presidencies when you actually watch live them transform. It can be a good thing or a bad thing. And I think what we saw with the Biden presidency is he has really lost his moral authority with his own people. And he was out yesterday, as we know, giving some remarks. Let's listen to those remarks now.
I made a commitment to the American people. when I ran for president that I would bring America's military involvement in Afghanistan to an end. While it's been hard and messy, and yes, far from perfect, I've honored that commitment.
Winsome Sears, if you were sitting and looking at the President of the United States, Joe Biden, right now, what would you tell him after making those comments?
I want you to speak directly, Mr. President, to the families who have lost loved ones. I want you to explain to them what messy really means. I want you to explain to them how, as a leader, you could have done better. How, as a leader, they don't think that this war was fought in vain, that we get something out of it at the end, that somehow all of this was worth it because you are the last one in charge. You are the commander in chief. Leaders don't run from a fight. Leaders embrace the mistakes that they have made. They own it. And Mr. President, we have not heard that from you in the way that we needed to. But here in Virginia, you know what we're going to do? I'm running to be lieutenant governor of our great Commonwealth. And as a Marine, I understand what it is like to be a vet. And we have over 750,000 vets in Virginia. 100,000 of those vets are women. We're going to help our vets. We need to make sure, for example, that we take part of their retirement funds and not tax it. That's what we can do for now. The rest we can do later. We have to ensure that they assimilate back into civilian society much, much easier because we need their brain power here in Virginia. We need all that knowledge that they have in Virginia to create jobs, to create wealth for our children and their children. We have the largest naval base, as a matter of fact, in the world, in Virginia. The headquarters of NATO is in Virginia. We owe our veterans our thanks, and we owe them some sort of answer, Mr. President. And what we heard, is it gonna fly, as we would say in the Marines?
Well, Winsome, that's a very powerful statement. You also had an opportunity to meet with Afghan American business owners in Fairfax, and you tweeted this out. They are severely concerned about the poorly executed withdrawal from the nation that many of their relatives call home. Tell us about that meeting that you had with them, and what do you think would be the right steps for President Biden to do to try to even salvage this disaster that he has caused?
And this is the thing. When I know these people from my business. I own a small business and we buy trucks from them. And so I thought we need to hear from the people who are actually being affected right now by it. So I went to talk to them yesterday to find out their views. And they're telling me, they said, do you mean that these folks, these two men were actually born here, but they're of Afghan descent. Their folks ran away from Afghanistan during that period of time I had mentioned before, and all they left with was $100, they said, in their grandfather's sock. Had to leave everything behind, land, fortune, everything. Started with nothing, just about like my father did back when he came in 1963, my father with only $1.75, and now they've made good. So I went to talk to them, to hear from them, and they said, we have to salvage something for all this time that America gave to Afghan people and to the people of Afghanistan who gave to us, who made promises to their families, their fortunes, everything. And so we really need to at least have a seat at the table. It can't be that the Chinese are now making deals based on negotiations that we had entered into. It can't be that the Russians are still there. Their embassies are still open. What? Are you kidding me? We've got to get something out of it. And sometimes, you have to cut these kinds of deals.
That's
Otherwise,
right.
it's going to end up right back where we started with nothing.
That's
and
right.
the Chinese are going to get everything.
That is such a powerful message. And, once again, focusing on the Commonwealth of Virginia, we've had all these controversies on the school boards around the state. We're the parents of 5 kids. Should people who are trapped in failing public schools, then those schools say they won't even open for them? teaching critical race theory, teaching our kids to hate their own country, to hate cops, to hate the military. As we end this interview in our last time, can you give us some hope that as a Commonwealth we can rise above this lunacy?
Hold on, Virginia. Help is on the way. We are going in November, and we are going to stop the divisiveness that we find ourselves in. There is no harmony among our politicians. There is no harmony. They have created black against white and this against that and Asians and no. Folks, we need to stop this wokeness. What we need to teach our children is critical reading theory, critical math theory, critical science and technology theory, because that's what will give our children marketable skills so that they can compete on a global level. Folks, as said before, China is scheduled to be the #1 superpower in 2030. We can't let that happen. We must maintain our place in the world. And the way that we're going, it's not happening. Not when 84% of Black children are failing math by the time they reach the 8th grade. And by the way, 85% are illiterate, functionally illiterate by the 8th grade. Where are these children going to go?
Right.
The school-to-prison pipeline has started, and even the NAACP agrees, because they have written letters to several school superintendents to say it's not working. Something has to change. And by the way, it's not just Black children. 70% of Latino children, 45% of white children, and 35% of Asian children are not learning math by the time they reach the 8th grade. Help is on the way. Vote differently.
Help is on the way, and I think that these races in Virginia are vitally important. We're going to put on the screen how people can help you in your race. We appreciate you joining us on CPAC Now, America Uncanceled, and keep fighting, and we're in your corner.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And we're going to be right back after this short break. Two great guests on this show, people who understand the crisis that we're in America and also overseas, obviously. And as we've said earlier, you've been doing a lot of work on TV generally, but on this morning show at Newsmax, and you had the chance to have a really important interview about the situation at the border with Mark Morgan, someone who's a really familiar face. We should show that clip.
So let's talk about this vetting process. The Biden administration, now that is looking to allow thousands of unvetted Afghan migrants to come into our country, what security issues does this pose to our nation?
First of all, look, when we're talking about the southwest border, let's look at that right now. One threat is not mutually exclusive. When you open your borders and 50% of the border total resources are pulled off the line to be daycare providers for unaccompanied minors and families, large other borders are unsecure. If you don't think terrorist organizations are not paying attention to that, looking to further exploit vulnerabilities, our southwest border is absolutely the top of the list as far as vulnerabilities. Now we shift to Afghan. Right, you're absolutely right. We're already seeing reports that Afghanistan citizens are loading the plane without a passport, without a document. Again, we have to temper our compassion with reality. We can't abandon common sense. We can't abandon the rule of law and our immigration laws would further jeopardize the United States. And I'm worried about this right now for political optics and some photo opportunities that we're going to abandon everything, including our common sense, because this administration has been completely incompetent in handling the Afghanistan situation.
I got to tell you, someone who definitely understands what's happening at the southern border, Mark Morgan, and he knows that it's only getting worse. And obviously, we're seeing that multiply in terms of now the crisis in Afghanistan. What does that mean for the asylum request?
Yeah.
What does that mean for more individuals coming into the United States? Another big issue that the Biden administration will have to tackle. We're going to keep talking about this.
Yeah.
These are important issues. We want you all to keep watching. Tell your friends about the show, CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. And remember to follow us at SCHLAPP, at CPAC, at Mercedes SCHLAPP. We'll keep you up to date on what's happening. And let me tell you, we're going to keep fighting for America and making sure that your voice is being heard. Thank you so much. God bless you, and God bless this great country.